I used to believe my life was the definition of stability. My marriage, my home, my routines, all of it painted a picture others might call enviable. Friends admired us. Neighbors often commented on how perfect we seemed together. And for a long time, I let myself believe it too. My partner, Alex, was attentive, charming in public, and always knew how to make people laugh. At gatherings, I would watch as others leaned into their presence, impressed by their charisma, and I would feel proud. I thought I had chosen well. Our home echoed that same sense of balance. Dinner together most nights, shared chores, quiet evenings spent with a movie, or planning our next short trip. On weekends, we'd wake up late, sit at the kitchen table with coffee, and talk about small things, dreams we half-joked about, or plans we swore we would take seriously one day. Those mornings were my favorite because they felt effortless. They felt real. But even in what I thought was happiness, there were moments I couldn't quite explain. Subtle changes, like shadows flickering against the brightness of routine. Alex, once quick to share every detail of their day, began keeping small things to themselves. Their phone, once casually left on the counter, was now always in their pocket or face down. I tried not to dwell on it. Everyone deserves privacy, I told myself. At first, the differences seemed harmless. A skipped dinner here, a late night at the gym there. I convinced myself it was simply stress, maybe an extra push at work, or the need for more personal time. After all, people grow and shift. That's normal, isn't it? Yet, as days slipped into weeks, the distance grew harder to ignore. Alex would come home later, often flushed and distracted, offering vague explanations. Their laughter, once a constant in our conversations, felt forced. Sometimes, when I leaned in to kiss them, I sensed hesitation, a pause so slight it could have been imagined, but it was enough to leave me unsettled. Inside, I carried a quiet unease. I didn't want to be the suspicious spouse, the one who combs through messages or asks too many questions. I told myself love means trust, and trust means believing the best even when doubt whispers otherwise. Still, in the middle of the night, lying awake beside them, I felt the silence between us grow louder. There's a certain cruelty in pretending everything is fine when your instincts are screaming otherwise. I laughed at their jokes, smiled during outings, nodded when friends remarked on how lucky I was. But behind that mask, I wrestled with an unshakable feeling. Something was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. Looking back now, I realized the truth had already begun to unravel. The story I told myself, that we were solid, untouchable, was already cracking. I just didn't know how deep the fracture ran or how much pain waited on the other side. This version introduces main characters, narrator plus Alex. Central conflict, seemingly perfect relationship with hidden cracks. Emotional tension, unease, denial, instincts ignored. Ending hook, hinting the fracture will grow. The truth didn't crash into me all at once. It arrived in fragments, small, undeniable pieces that refused to be ignored. Alex's late nights at the gym had become routine, explained away with claims of needing to push harder or blowing off steam. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to trust. But deep down, something about the explanations rang hollow. One evening, when Alex returned home later than usual, I caught a faint scent clinging to their clothes, familiar, but not mine. It wasn't our laundry detergent or my cologne. It was something sharper, musky, and foreign. When I asked about it, Alex brushed it off with a quick laugh, saying someone at the gym must have been wearing too much. I smiled, nodded, but inside, unease took root. A week later, that unease became unbearable. Alex had left their phone on the nightstand, screen glowing softly in the dark. Normally, I would have looked away. Trust had always been the foundation of what we built. But that night, something compelled me to reach for it. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, part guilt, part dread.
What I found shattered me.
The messages were explicit, passionate, and unmistakable. Words I had once heard whispered to me were now directed at someone else. Phrases like bigger, stronger, better than anything leapt from the screen, cutting deeper than any blade could. Photos followed, images that erased any hope of misunderstanding. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room tilted. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might break through my chest. My world, our world, collapsed in that instant. Everything I had built in my mind, every memory, every promise, it all dissolved under the weight of those words. When Alex walked back into the room, I was still holding the phone. My face must have given everything away because their expression shifted from confusion to panic in a heartbeat. I asked nothing at first. The silence was heavy enough. When I finally spoke, my voice was quiet, steady, but laced with a pain I couldn't hide. "How long?" Alex stammered. Denials crumbled into excuses, excuses into half-truths. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It was just curiosity. It's not what you think." But the evidence was undeniable. The messages, the pictures, the comparisons, they screamed a reality I could no longer ignore. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand an explanation that could make sense of this betrayal. Instead, I sat frozen, gripping the phone like it might anchor me against the storm. My body shook, but my voice remained calm, almost detached. It wasn't anger that consumed me in that moment. It was devastation. And yet, even in my devastation, one thought echoed louder than the rest. If what we had was so strong, so perfect, why wasn't it enough? After that night, silence became my constant companion. The house that once held laughter and warmth now echoed with emptiness. Every room felt foreign, every object tainted by betrayal. The kitchen table, once a place of lazy morning coffees and whispered dreams, now looked like a stage where illusions had played out. Even the bed, our bed, felt poisoned. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, every breath heavy, every thought replaying the same unbearable images. The days blurred together. I went through the motions of life, working, eating, speaking when spoken to, but inside, I was hollow. Friends asked if I was okay, and I lied with a practiced smile. Family noticed my distraction, and I brushed it off as fatigue. How could I tell them? How could I admit that the person I trusted most had torn me apart? In the quiet moments, the questions consumed me. Was I not enough? Should I have done more, loved harder, listened better, looked different? Each thought spiraled into another, dragging me deeper into a pit of self-blame. I replayed the messages in my mind, every cruel comparison cutting fresh wounds. The phrase bigger, stronger, beyond anything, echoed like a chant, each repetition chiseling away at my self-worth. I stopped eating properly. Food lost its taste. Nights stretched endlessly, my body weary, but my mind relentless. Even when exhaustion pulled me into sleep, dreams turned into nightmares, replaying the betrayal in distorted, twisted ways. I would wake with a start, heart pounding, sheets damp with sweat, only to find the nightmare hadn't ended. It was my reality. Alex tried, in their own way, to explain, to rationalize. Sometimes with apologies, sometimes with anger. It didn't mean anything. I was confused. "I still love you." But their words, no matter how desperately spoken, were hollow. How do you rebuild trust when it has been shattered so violently? How do you hold on to love when it has been corrupted by deceit? I withdrew further. I avoided conversations, avoided mirrors, avoided myself. Looking into my own eyes felt unbearable because all I could see was inadequacy. Every flaw, every imperfection seemed amplified, like proof that maybe Alex had been right to stray. But somewhere, in the midst of that despair, a realization began to flicker. The betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, it was a reflection of theirs. Cheating wasn't about me being less, it was about them seeking more without considering the cost. That flicker was faint, fragile, but it was there. It would take time, I knew. Time to unravel the lies I had believed, time to rebuild the pieces of myself that had been crushed. But even in my weakest moments, one truth started to emerge. I wasn't broken because I had been betrayed. I was broken because I still believed their betrayal defined me. And perhaps in time I could change that. Healing did not arrive like a sudden dawn. It came slowly, hesitantly, as though afraid to enter the ruins of what had been my life. In the early days, I expected pain to vanish quickly, as if betrayal could be rinsed away by time alone. But instead, it lingered, sharp at first, then dull, always present. What changed wasn't the weight of the wound, but my strength to carry it. I began with small steps. Waking up and making my bed. Cooking a meal for myself, even when I didn't feel like eating. Taking walks without direction, just to feel the air on my skin. These weren't victories anyone else could see, but to me, they were proof. I was still here. Therapy helped me give shape to the chaos in my mind. Words I had bottled up spilled out in those sessions: anger, grief, confusion, shame. My therapist reminded me of something I had forgotten. Betrayal is not a mirror of the betrayed, but of the betrayer. Those words, repeated gently over time, began to stitch me back together. I found solace in rediscovering parts of myself that had been neglected. Music I once loved filled my evenings again. Books that had gathered dust on shelves finally opened in my hands. I wrote, scribbled pages of thoughts, letters I would never send, reflections I wasn't ready to share. The act of writing was like breathing again, reminding me I had a voice separate from the one that had been silenced by pain. Alex tried to return. There were apologies, promises of change, claims of regret. Once, that might have swayed me. Once, I might have clung to the hope of fixing what had been broken. But now, standing in the aftermath, I saw clearly. Love without respect is not love at all, and trust, once shattered, cannot be pieced back without scars that never fade. When I finally told them no, it wasn't with anger, but with clarity. My voice was steady, calm. You compared me to someone else, I said. But I know my worth now. That moment wasn't about revenge or victory. It was about release. About choosing myself, perhaps for the first time in years. With time, the echoes of betrayal grew fainter. The words that once haunted me no longer carried the same power. They became part of my story, yes, but not the whole of it. What defined me wasn't the pain inflicted on me, but the resilience I discovered within myself. Life is not perfect now, nor do I expect it to be. But there's strength in knowing I survived what once felt unsurvivable. There's freedom in realizing my value does not hinge on another's choices. And as I step forward, one truth stays with me. Betrayal may break us, but it does not define us. What defines us is the courage to rise, even from ashes.